Welcome to the second video in our sandbox tutorial video series. We're going to pick up where we left off last time. So I'm in here in my sandbox project. Remember, you can request a copy of this project from our support team. That way you'll be able to follow along with this training. Let me show you how to request this sandbox project. You're going to want to head over to the question mark in the top right corner and then head over to our support center. The top of the page, you'll find a Submit Request button. Go ahead and click Submit a Request and then choose from the drop-down General Support. Just mention that you're looking for a copy of the Sandbox project to be copied into your space, and we'll be happy to help you get that set up. Hit Submit once you've finished filling out this form. Now, before we dive into today's topics, let's take a look at our agenda for the day. As mentioned, this is the second video. We're going to start by duplicating a scenario. Then we're going to show you how to use the 3D navigation controls and give you a tour of the scenario user interface, including where to get help and find learning resources. We'll then create a site condition that's going to prep our site for the rest of the work. We'll follow that up with bringing in a PDF drawing and overlaying that on top of our map tile. We'll then assign some resources to our scenario before switching gears to our schedule. We'll show you how to create that project schedule manually, as well as how to import a project schedule file. We'll then assign resources to our schedule before switching gears to buildings. I'll show you how to use the massing tool. The massing tool is a tool you can use to create a lightweight building in cmBuilder when you don't have a BIM model. We'll also, of course, show you how to import and position 3D BIM models, as well as how to attach those piece by piece to the schedule. We'll cover a few smaller topics before covering excavation and then the annotation tools, and we'll wrap it up with some tips and tricks related to resources. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Heading back over to cmBuilder, you're going to want to duplicate the Duplicate Me scenario. The Duplicate Me scenario is the starting point for our training. So go ahead and click those three dots and click on Duplicate. Now, whenever you're creating a duplicate, I recommend either dropping in your name or initials and the reason for creating the duplicate. That way others will know what the purpose of this scenario is. You're going to want to make sure all the content to duplicate is selected, and go ahead and click on Create Scenario. It's going to create a fresh new scenario for you based on that Duplicate Me scenario. While that loads in, we'll start with a quick scenario user interface tour. Why don't we start by showing you the 3D navigation controls. Head over to the question mark in the top right corner and click on Key Shortcuts. Then click on Navigation Mode, and it's going to display the 3D navigation controls for Orbit Mode. Now, Orbit Mode is the default navigation mode. By the way, I recommend using a mouse whenever using cmBuilder. Let's start by teaching you how to pan your view. Now, panning is a linear camera movement. Simply click and hold your right mouse button and drag your mouse either side to side or up and down to get a linear camera movement. Next, we'll cover rotating. Click and hold the left mouse button this time and move your mouse either side to side or up and down for a camera rotation. Next, we'll cover zooming. Scroll in or scroll up with the scroll wheel to zoom in, and scroll down with the scroll wheel to zoom out. Next, we'll cover redefining the pivot point. The pivot point is kind of the point of focus. So at various times, you're going to want to focus at different areas on your site. You can redefine your pivot point to help with that. Our project site is going to be right here, this field. So I'm going to go ahead and click my scroll wheel while my cursor is over that field, and we'll see the map jump a little bit. Now when I zoom in, it zooms into that point. Also when I rotate, it rotates around that point. So at various times, you're going to want to focus on different areas. For example, these tennis courts, I'll take my cursor over there, click with the scroll wheel. We'll see that the map jumps, and now when I zoom in, it's zooming into these tennis courts. So that's how you redefine your pivot point. You'll do that quite frequently in cmBuilder. Let's go ahead and close those navigation controls and continue with the scenario user interface tour. Next, we have the Edit, View, or Lock drop-down. You're going to want to click on this drop-down to switch from a viewer to an editor or vice versa. You may also want to lock or unlock the scenario from here. It's important to note you can only have one editor in a scenario at a time, but multiple viewers is allowed. Heading over to the left side of the screen, we have our breadcrumb trail. Starting at the end of it, this is the scenario we're currently working in. If I hover over that it will give me the full name of the scenario. And this scenario lives in our Sandbox Tower project. If I click on this button right here, it's going to take me to the project overview page for this project. That's the page that lists all of the scenarios. And this project lives in our homepage. So if I click on this button here, it'll take me to my company homepage. That's the page that lists all of the active projects. Moving down, we have our scenario tree. We can turn the visibility for that tree on or off by clicking on scenario tree. The scenario tree is a categorized list of all the different objects we will either create or import into this scenario. And we can expand this list. For example, under my drawing overlay section, I have a drawing here. Now, if I right click on this drawing, it's going to display some options for me. I can hide or show this drawing. I can copy or paste it, as well as a few other things. I'll also mention that you'll see some keyboard shortcuts next to these buttons. Why don't we go ahead and temporarily show this drawing? So I click on temporary show, and that drawing is going to appear here in 3D. Now, if I right click on that drawing in 3D, I'll get the same set of options. So I'll go ahead and hide that. Now in 3D, if we zoom in, we're going to see there is a number of trees in this case. Now, if I click on one of those trees, this tree is from our resource catalog. It's been kind of pre-populated into this scenario for use in our duplicate project, and you're going to notice that the tree automatically expands and shows me where that tree is. If I want to collapse my tree, I can make use of this button to collapse it, and it takes me back to the default view. Moving on down, we have a few tools here in the toolbar. We're going to cover those one by one, so we will skip them from now. Next, we're going to look at app performance. If you're new to cmBuilder, make sure you click on app performance. App performance reports to you how your current browser session is handling your scenario. Today, I just want to mention the hardware and software performance, specifically a GPU. I'm going to expand this section, and it may or may not list a GPU for you here. A GPU is a dedicated graphics card. A lot of computers have graphics cards. Now, it's not required to have a graphics card to run cmBuilder, but if you have better hardware, you will see better performance. That being said, internet browsers by default don't have access to the extra processing power a GPU has to offer. Thankfully, there's a quick setting you can change that will allow your browser to make use of that extra horsepower that your GPU has to offer. We have an article that describes exactly how to do this in our user guide. You're going to want to head up to the question mark, click on user guide, and just search for edit browser settings. Click on edit browser GPU settings and follow the instructions here to make that change for Edge and Chrome. By the way, Edge and Chrome are the browsers we recommend. I'm going to close that and close app performance. Next, we have settings. The settings page has a display tab and a graphics tab. From here, we can change our display and graphics settings. We have things like reflections in windows, environmental lighting, background and backdrop, as well as the ability to display or not display the extended map. Now, I should note that the extended map is only available for projects that use the Google Maps. It's not available for the Mapbox project. You can turn that on or off from here. You can also extend or change the brightness of the extended map to make it a little bit easier to see your project site from further away. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the extended map for it now. All right, zooming back in. Next, we have the graphics tab. The graphics tab has similar settings, for example, ground shadow, ambient occlusion, building edges. I'm going to leave these as is. Now, if you happen to experience some performance issues, you might consider switching from best quality to either recommended or best performance. Now, switching to these other options is going to apply a different configuration of the settings you see below. It's going to trade off visual quality for performance. I'm going to go ahead and leave that at best quality and back out of settings. And down here at the bottom of the screen, we have our timeline. We're going to cover that a little bit later, so I'll skip it for now. Next, we have the view mode toggle buttons here in the bottom right-hand corner. We're going to start with the first button here, which will either switch us between Project North or True North. If I click it once, it's going to put Project North at the top of the screen. If I click it again, it's going to put true north at the top of the screen. Remember, in my local project coordinates last time, I set my project north to be almost 180 degrees from my true north. Next, we have icon view. Icon view is going to display icons instead of resources for some of the resources in your project. Now, this sandbox project is pre-populated with some resources to reflect the existing conditions. You see a fire hydrant here. When I turn on icon view, it's going to replace that with an icon, which is going to be a lot easier to see when we are zoomed out. Next, we have the 2D versus 3D toggle button. I'm currently in 3D. I can rotate and zoom in 3 dimensions. When I click on 2D, it's going to put me in a plan view. I'm locked to 2 dimensions now. I can only rotate in these 2 dimensions and zoom in these 2 dimensions. If I want to switch back to 3D, I got to click on 3D. The difference between a 3D top-down and a 2D mode is that the 2D is in plan view, also known as a parallel view or an orthographic view. I won't be able to see the sides of the buildings here when I'm in 2D. Currently I'm in 3D. When I switch to 2D, I'll no longer be able to see those. So that's the biggest clue that you're in 3D or 2D. Moving on down, we have the sequencing helper. We're going to cover that a little bit later, so I will skip it for now. Moving up to the top right hand corner, I'm going to click on my initials, the black and white ones, and then click user settings. This is where you'll find your user settings. Now by default, users are going to inherit their company settings, but individual users can change these settings to their own preferences. From here, you can change your preferred date and time format, maybe your milestone display format. I recommend index. Your resource default positioning, I recommend dynamic, as well as your unit preferences. If you make any changes to these first 2 sections, go ahead and hit confirm. You don't have to worry about refreshing the page. They're going to automatically apply. Next, we have the question mark. From the question mark, you can access the learning and help resources. We'll start here with our user guide. If I click on my user guide, it gives me my full user guide. I can expand these sections and explore that on my own, or I can search for something. If I search for drone, for example, it's going to list all articles related to drones. If I click on an article, I get the full article here on the right side. I can read the text. I can even watch the videos from the side sheet. Now the images and videos are a little bit hard to see, seeing as they're kind of small. So scroll up to the top and click open in new tab to get a full screen version of the same article. All the same text, but the images are a little bit easier to see. Next, we have our tutorial videos. If you click on tutorial videos, it's going to launch a new tab for you. It's going to take you to a playlist of videos. You'll find our sandbox tutorial videos here, as well as tutorials covering individual tools. Next, under the question mark, we have our key shortcuts. Our key shortcuts is a list of all of the keyboard shortcuts. You're going to want to go ahead and take a look at these shortcuts to save yourself a little bit of time. Next, we have bug reports. Unfortunately, bugs happen. We appreciate it when you report them to us. Just make sure you copy the URL here from the top of the page and paste it in here. Also, leave us a good description of the bug. Please describe the steps you took to reproduce that bug. If we're not able to reproduce the bug, we are not able to troubleshoot and fix it. So we appreciate any extra effort you spend on a description. Next, we have the feature requests. cmBuilder is 100% web-based. So that means every time you refresh the page, you're on the latest version of cmBuilder. We push updates every Monday morning around 9 a.m. Pacific time. And with those weekly pushes, you're going to find updates to existing features, new features, and bug fixes. Now, if there's a feature you'd like to see in cmBuilder, please request it and hit submit. We love to hear your feedback. We just ask that you capture it in a feature request. Moving on down, we have the ability to book support sessions from the question mark as well. If you click on book support, it will pop open a new tab. Go ahead and click book support there on the right side. This will take you to a support calendar. From the calendar here, you can choose a date, you can choose a time, and then leave us a couple of notes regarding what you're looking for help with. Once you hit confirm, either me or one of our customer success teammates will be happy to hop on a Teams call and help you sort through your questions. Lastly, we have the chat. If you click on Let's Chat, it's going to pop open the in-app chat. and you're going to be greeted by our cmBuilder AI chatbot. Now, he's read the entire user guide, and he's going to try his best to answer your question. He answers about 80% of questions. Now, if you're not happy with his response, go ahead and click Talk to Human or type Talk to Human down here and send that message through. That's going to notify our team, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Now that we've covered all of the user interface, let's go ahead and do something a little bit more interactive. We're going to start by creating a site condition. Let's visit our agenda real quick. Now, a site condition is how we prep our site for new construction, and this applies only to the Google 3D map tile projects. So this is going to be our project site. If we take a closer look, we're going to see that it's got some trees on there, and that is kind of in the way of our project. So we are going to clear out this area. We're going to head over to the left side of the screen and click on terrain. Then we're going to click on extract site condition. The site condition is a sketch-based feature here in cmBuilder. So when you bring your cursor into 3D, you will see a pencil attached to your cursor, as well as a blue square. Now that blue square is telling us that we need to select a surface to sketch on. So I'm going to go ahead and click right here. As soon as I click, a grid is going to appear. That's my sketch grid, and it's oriented to align with my local project coordinates. Now I'm going to sketch the shape of my site condition here, the area that I want to clear out. Now, as soon as you create a sketch, you will find that the line tool will already be activated. Go ahead and hit escape if it's not starting where you want to start your shape. It's also a good idea to click on 2D anytime you're creating a sketch. Let's zoom in here and create a site condition. I'm going to start that right about here. And we're going to come over here, and I'm clicking. Every time I click, it creates a point. That comes down to about here, and then over here. All right, and I'm going to want to close this shape. Make sure that whenever you're closing a shape, that the point highlights as blue. That means it's connected. All right, let's switch back to 3D mode and go to a 3D view here. I'm going to go ahead and hit confirm, and you're going to see that all the 3D in this area is captured in orange here. And that is captured in a site condition. Now, by default, site conditions are hidden from all milestones. You may or may not want to turn that option on or off. I'm going to turn it off in this case, and we're going to go ahead and click on done. Now, if I click somewhere else, we'll see I deselect my site condition. And if I click it here in 3D, it will show me where in my tree my site condition is. I'm going to right click on this and choose to temporarily hide that. And that is going to flatten down our site in order for us to be able to bring in a drawing. The next thing we're going to do is import a drawing. We're going to head over to the left side of the screen and click on Drawing Import. It's going to pop open a side sheet here. And within this side sheet, you can drag and drop your project drawings. We accept drawings in PDF format. We also accept images. We recommend you upload a PNG, but we accept JPEGs as well. So go ahead and drag and drop your PDF into this box, or click on Upload File to select it from your system. Today, we don't need to upload a drawing because we have one ready to use in this sandbox project. I'm going to head over to my scenario tree and expand the drawing overlay section, in which we'll find our drawing. I'm going to right click on this and choose Edit. And it's going to pop open the side sheet for this drawing. I should probably also turn the visibility of this drawing on. I can right click on it and choose Temporary Show. I can do that either from 3D or from the tree. Now that my drawing is visible, we are going to use the Align and Position function here to align, position, scale, and orient this drawing to match our cmBuilder map. When we click on Align and Position, it gives us a split screen. To get a little bit more working room, I'm going to hide my scenario tree. Now in the split screen, on the left, I see my cmBuilder map, and on the right, I see my PDF. We're going to select 2 points common to both our PDF and our cmBuilder map, and cmBuilder is going to use those 2 points as reference points to align, position, and scale this drawing to match the map. You can see the steps listed here on the right side. We're going to start by selecting a point on our drawing. I'm going to zoom into my drawing, and we're going to find a point to use. I'm going to zoom into this street lamp, and I'm going to zoom into the base and eyeball where the center of that is and click to place my first point. And I'm going to want to find that same point here in my cmBuilder map. So if I zoom out a little bit, it'll give us an idea of where to look. And that street lamp is going to be just to the left of this ramp. And we're going to zoom in and you will find that we have a lamp from our street lamp from our resource catalog already placed here. Once again, we're going to click on the base of that to place it. All right, I'll zoom out of my cmBuilder map and out of my drawing, and we're going to find a second point. Now, when you're selecting a second point, I'd recommend going at least halfway across the drawing, and we're going to select another landmark here. We're going to use this power line pole. So we'll eyeball where the center of that is, and I will place my point there in the drawing. Now I need to find that same pole here in 3D, and if I zoom in, you'll see that we've actually added one from our library, and it's right here. A little bit hard to see, but it's just below the center point of these two dots. I'll click and place my point there. Let's do a quick quality check. I'm going to grab the center divider and drag it over to the right side, and I'll get to do a quality check. All right, we'll use this slider here to bring that visibility down to a point where I can see both, and I will just compare how things look. So my quality check consists of finding a nice straight long horizontal line, maybe like the curve here, and I'll just slide that up and down and compare the two, and that looks like I've aligned it pretty well. Next, I'll do the same with a vertical line. So why don't we use the edge of this building here. And that seems to align pretty well as well. So overall, I'm happy with the result of this alignment. Now, if I wanted to adjust that, I have a couple of options. I can click on these reposition points right here, and that will allow me to reposition, in this case, M1. Remember, M1 was up here. I can choose to place it somewhere else. Another option I have is I can actually click and hold on that point here in 3D and drag it over to where I want it to be, which is right about there. So I'll release my mouse. Might help to bring the opacity down. And that still looks pretty good. So if you're happy with that, maybe turn on Save Opacity and click on Confirm. Now we've positioned our drawing in 2 dimensions, but if we rotate in 3D, we'll see we have not yet set the elevation for this drawing. It is still floating. Now this is the logistics plan, so it's going to belong on the ground. To do that, I'm just going to turn on Project on Terrain, which is going to project this drawing onto the surface of our map tile. Now if your drawing turns orange like mine did here, that's because Hide from All Milestones is activated. We're going to right click on our drawing and choose Temporary Show to be able to see that. And that looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to go ahead and click on Done and click off this drawing. Now, because this drawing is in the background, we are regularly going to be selecting it accidentally. In order to avoid selecting it every other minute, you're going to want to right click on that drawing and choose Lock. By locking this drawing, we can no longer select it here from 3D by left clicking. I would have to right click on it and choose Unlock before I can make any changes. Thankfully, I can hide or show it very easily. I could also head over to my scenario tree and find the drawing. Now this drawing is hidden from all milestones. What that means is its default condition is hidden. It also means that the drawing is attached to our quick access menu. The quick access menu is found here under these 3 dots. And from the drawing section, we can quickly turn the visibility on or off for this drawing, which is very handy. It saves us from having to expand our tree, expand our drawing overlay section, find our drawing, right click on that, and activate the visibility from here. Now that we've positioned the drawing, why don't we go ahead and insert some resources? Let's start with our crane. So if we zoom into our site here, we see that it has a tower crane. I'm going to head over to my resource catalog off the left side of the screen. We're going to change categories here to equipment and vehicles. We're then going to come down to our fixed cranes. We currently have 285 makes and models of fixed cranes to choose from. From this list, I can choose a crane. Now, if I take a closer look at my drawing, we'll see that it actually has a crane envelope here. And the reach for this crane needs to be 150 feet, as listed right there. I can make use of my filters here to reduce that list of 285 down to something more manageable. As soon as I do, we'll see that we've reduced that to 155 results. So I can go ahead and make a selection from this list. Now, if you don't know where to start, it's not a bad idea to use one of our generic crane models. So I'll head up to here and just search generic. We have a few generic models in here. Why don't we start with a generic medium hammerhead crane? So I'm going to select this. Now this is a point resource. That's the first of the 3 types of resources we'll cover today. When I bring my cursor into 3D with a point resource, I'll see that that resource is attached to my cursor. I can click anywhere on this map to place that crane. I'm going to click right here and we'll move it into the correct location in a minute. As soon as I click, we see that the side sheet pops up, which lists some details and options related to this crane, starting with the make and model listed right here. We also have a swap button, which we can use to swap this crane for a different make and model. Moving down, we can choose to show our logo by turning on or off this option. We can also click on this logo to display a library of logos and select an alternative logo. I only have one logo in here right now, but it's not a bad idea to also upload customer logos here. That way you can apply them to your scenario. You can choose the position of that logo. We have 3 options for this tower crane. The logo is currently positioned near the counterweights here, but if I change that to B, for example, it's going to display on my mast. I also recommend uploading a version of your logo with a solid white background. Transparent's nice, but in this case, it's a little bit difficult to see. We can customize the color from right here. We have some system defaults to choose from, or you can set a custom color by clicking on this plus button and choosing your preferred color. If you set a color, it will be saved so you can use it again in the future. We save up to 5 currently. So that is my crane. All right, let's move this crane. It's not in the correct location. It belongs right over here. To move your tower crane, you're going to want to head over to move and up here in the top right corner, click on move, and that's going to do 2 things. It's going to display some coordinates on the right side, and in 3D, it's going to display the move handles if they weren't already visible. Now these coordinates that we see listed here on the right side, they refer to the center point of this move handle. So what that means is if I adjust one of these values, for example, let's type in -10 and I hit enter, it will drop my crane down until that is -10 meters below the surface. Okay, we can also click and hold on these arrows here and drag our cursor to reposition our crane. So I'm going to center my crane around the X that we see there by making use of these move handles. Might want to rotate our crane as well. I simply click on rotate to display my rotation handles. The way the rotation handles work, they work like turntables. I can click and hold on any one of these discs and move my cursor, and that is going to rotate my crane. By the way, if I hold the shift key, it is going to rotate in 45-degree rotation increments. I'll just release my cursor. I want to bring that back up to the surface, so I'll make use of the drop to surface button here, which is going to bring it up to the surface. Okay, let's go ahead and click on done. Now we had chosen the generic crane kind of at random here. We're going to go ahead and swap that in for a real life make and model. If we zoom into our logistics plan, we see that it lists a make and model right there. It's a JSO J300 hammerhead crane. I'm going to head over to this swap button and click on it. And that is going to take me back to my resource library. I'll reset any filters and clear my search and then type in the make and model I'm looking for, in this case the JSO J300, and I'll select it here from the results. And what that's going to do is replace this generic crane model with the actual JSO J300. So let's go ahead and click yes, swap, and it's going to bring in our JSO J300. Now, for these cranes that are based on real life makes and models, we can actually head over to the specs tab. And from the specs tab, we'll find the manufacturer spec sheet. I'm going to click on preview here. It'll pop up a PDF previewer here. I'll zoom in a little bit. And the spec sheet is a great reference for, in this case, our different configurations for the jib and counter jib, as well as the mast height. It's also got some other useful information. We're going to go ahead and adjust our crane to match one of these configurations. I'm going to click the X and we're going to click on the adjust button. When I click on the adjust button, two things happen. On the right side, it lists a bunch of adjustments, and in the 3D, it displays the adjustment handles. Now, these adjustment handles correspond to these sliders. So if I grab one of these handles here and adjust that in 3D, we'll see one of the sliders adjusting live. So this is the hook height adjustment. I'm going to bring that all the way up. Let me tell you a little bit more about using these adjustment handles. We're going to zoom in here to the load that we see attached to this crane. Now, a lot of our cranes and trucks have this block as a sample load. The idea behind this is you can adjust the size of this to reflect some pick you need to make and validate your clearances. We are going to get rid of this by minimizing the size by using our adjustment handles. So the way these adjustment handles work is you click and hold on one of those handles and you drag it. In this case, I'm dragging it down to 0. Now all of the other handles have disappeared. I got to click somewhere in the background. When I do, the rest of my handles will appear again. I'll grab the next pair and bring that down to 0. Once again, clicking in the background to then grab the last pair and bring that down to 0. So I've hidden that completely. And we can do the same thing with the rest of these handles. So let's go ahead and grab our jib handle here and adjust that. And you're going to notice this one behaves a little bit differently. Instead of allowing me to stop at any point I want with a continuous range, this one is changing in increments. So starting at 75 meters, it changes in 5-meter increments up to a minimum of 35 meters. And those increments are not random. They are what we saw on the manufacturer spec sheet. We'll find the same thing here with our mast height. The segments for this crane are 6 meters tall. So we're seeing that adjust in 6-meter increments. I'll just bring that all the way down to 0. All right, let me click on the background to bring up the rest of my adjustments. There's one more adjustment I'd like to show you, which is only available from the side sheet, and that is the jib length envelope. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And I'm going to position my view up top here. And if I zoom out and I center my view above the crane, you can see that the positioning of the crane here, it seems like we can reach all 4 corners of our building. We can see that there in the background in our drawing. But we're currently in 3D. And my recommendation whenever you are making decisions and edits from a top-down view is to click on 2D. When I click on 2D, we'll see that the current crane configuration and its current location doesn't actually reach all 4 corners of the building. So when we're in 3D, we got a different story. In 2D, we get the true story. So that is why it's important to always click on 2D whenever editing, especially from a top-down view, so you get the full picture. We'll just grab that handle and pull out the jib until we have full coverage of our building. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on Done and Done. Now that crane envelope is a little bit distracting, so I might want to hide it. To do so, simply double click on your crane to pop up that side sheet. Once again, I'm going to head back into adjustments and turn off my jib length envelope. By the way, we have something similar for mobile cranes, excavators, and concrete pump trucks. Okay, we've positioned our tower crane. Why don't we add in a site fence next? We can see that on our drawing. I'm going to head back over to resources off the left side of the screen. We'll change categories now to logistics and facilities. I'm going to come down to the fences subcategory. We have 108 styles of fences we can choose from. And then we'll go ahead and choose a fence. Today, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with this chain link screen fence. I'm going to select it, and this is a polyline resource. So when I bring my cursor into 3D, instead of seeing the fence attached to my cursor like I did with the tower crane, I'm going to see a pencil. And that tells me that I have to create a sketch. Now we already know how that works. I got to choose the surface I want to sketch on and then sketch my fence line. I'm going to start this at one of the corners of my fence. So I just click with the scroll wheel there on my corner, and then I click on the drawing, and I see my sketch grid appear. My drawing, remember, was projected on the terrain, so the sketch grid is at the same elevation as the ground. We're going to go ahead and sketch the shape of this fence. I'm going to click on 2D, and I will click on this Project North button to orient me so that I see Project North. And I'll simply zoom in to the different corners here and click to place a corner point. All right, we have sketched in the shape of our fence. We're going to switch back to 3D mode and see how that looks. So I'll click on confirm and we will see our fence appear. If we head over to the right side, we'll see that this is our chain link fence. We can swap that for a different style of fence if we like. We see that our logo is displayed, and if we zoom into our fence, that logo is on the outside. If you needed to switch it, you can use the position option to change that. We can apply a custom color to our fence, but I'll leave this as green. I also want to mention the project on terrain function. We'll turn that off for a sec, and if I do, you'll notice that my fence is now floating over here. But if we go back to our origin point for this fence, it is perfectly on the ground. The project on terrain function, when we turn it on, makes it so that every single panel of our fence drops down to touch the ground. Not a big deal on a relatively flat site like this, but you can imagine a larger site with a bit of a slope that would look pretty terrible. Okay, heading over to the adjustments, we can adjust the height of this fence either from the sliders here on the right or by grabbing a hold of these handles here in 3D. And I will set this fence so that it's about 1.7 meters high by about 2.5 meters wide. And that's going to adjust every single panel. Let's go ahead and click on Done. When it comes to spacing, you have a few options for these polyline resources. You can choose no overlap, overlap excessive length, or custom spacing. For the fence panels, I recommend going with overlap excessive length. We're then going to go ahead and click on Done. We've now placed our fence. The next thing we're going to do is add in a few gates. So if we look at our drawing, we'll see that we have two access points to this site, Gate 1 and Gate 2. Let's head back to our resource library by clicking on Resources. We're going to back out of the Fences subcategory and come down to the Gates subcategory. We have 71 styles of gates to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and find a double swing gate. What do I search for that? Use this double swing chain wire gate. I click on this, and as soon as I bring my cursor into 3D, we don't see the gate attached to our cursor. We don't see the pencil attached to our cursor like we did for our tower crane and for our fence. That's because the gate is currently being used in the guided resource configuration. Now, a guided resource is only going to appear once you place it over a guide. So in the case of a gate, that guide has to be a fence. And our gates are positioned based on the center point of the gate. So I position my gate over my fence, and I click one time. It places my gate, and it cuts out my fence. I'm going to go ahead and adjust the width of this gate and the height of the gate to match what we see there on the drawing. I can do that from 3D by using the adjustment handles. We also have a third adjustment here, and that is how open or closed these gates are. Why don't we open these gates inwards? I'm going to go ahead and click on Done, and we'll add in one more gate for Gate 2. Placing that right over top, and then adjusting the height and the width of the gate to match the drawing. And why don't we also swing these inwards? So clicking and holding on this little dot and sliding it around, that is a rotation handle. Clicking on done and done. We've got two gates placed now. Let's go ahead and close our resource catalog. Now that we have a few resources placed, why don't we go ahead and talk about the schedule. Down here at the bottom of the screen, we have our timeline. Currently have one milestone in this timeline. You need at least one milestone per scenario. We can add multiple milestones manually. To add them manually, simply click on this plus button to add a second milestone. You can go ahead and type in a name for that milestone as soon as it appears. I'll call that test 1. I can also click on the three dots on an existing milestone and add a milestone before and after. Milestones can be added from the timeline at the bottom of the screen or from the project schedule, which you can launch by clicking project schedule here from the left, or right click on one of these milestones and launch the project schedule. Project schedule will appear in a side sheet here on the right. We can also add milestones either by clicking milestone or from these three dots to add it before or after an existing milestone. I'm going to add a milestone before milestone 1. I'll call that milestone 2. I'll click in white space to commit that name. Now that I have multiple milestones, I might want to adjust the sequence. To adjust the sequence of these, we're going to need to change the dates. You can change the dates of these milestones by clicking on the three dots and choosing Edit Date. Why don't we place Test 1 in front of Test 2? So I'm going to click on Edit Date. That'll pop up a little calendar. From this calendar, I can choose a date. You'll also notice that we have yellow dots underneath some of these dates. That tells me that I have a milestone on that date. I can choose a date that is before our Test 2, or if I want two milestones on the same date, that is also allowed. I just select that date. When you have multiple milestones on the same date, you will have a extra option in this calendar which allows you to set the order. We'll of course choose to place Test 1 ahead of Test 2. I'll click in white space there and it will adjust the dates. That's how you manually create milestones. Why don't we go ahead and delete these milestones next? I'm going to hold the Control key and select both rows there. I'll then click these three dots and choose to delete these. Make sure you confirm that. I've showed you how to create milestones manually. I'm next going to show you how to import a schedule file. Go ahead and click Import Schedule. We can drag and drop a schedule file into this little box, or we can click Upload and select it from our system. The supported file types are MPP, XER, and an Excel file. MPP is of course Microsoft Project. XER would be P6, ASTA, and a few others. You can also upload an Excel file, but you'll first need to download the template and fill that template file out before re-uploading it. For our sandbox project, we don't need to upload a file. We'll just make use of this schedule that's already saved. I'm going to click on this schedule and then click load, and that's going to pull in our schedule file. Now this was a Microsoft project schedule, and we see that it lists a lot of tasks, a lot of sections. You typically don't need to bring in sections like your design and procurement phase, so I'll just minimize that. We want to focus on the construction phase or any other phase where we can show progress in our 3D viewer here. This is essentially a Gantt chart. On the left side, we have our row or task ID. In the middle, we have our task name. And on the right side, instead of that horizontal bar graph, we see our start and end dates. We are going to select dates from this list. Now let me explain a little bit more about milestones. Milestones are cmBuilder's unit of time. A milestone is a snapshot in time. It exists at a single point in time on a single date. And that is a little bit different than a task, which you might be used to working with if you use a Gantt chart type scheduling tool. Tasks have start and end dates. Milestones only have a single date, so they are not exactly the same. You want to think of milestones as completion dates. So when it comes time to select dates from an imported schedule, we are mostly going to be selecting end dates. Let's take site mobilization here, for example. I'm going to select the end date. We want to show what our site looks like once it is fully mobilized. So we'll be creating a milestone for our mobilized site. If I were to select my start date, there would be no progress to show in 3D. So it really doesn't make sense to grab a start date. I'm going to go ahead and grab a few more end dates. I'm going to hold Control. That's going to allow me to select multiple rows. We're going to select a few from our site work, and then I will click on the end date for one of those, and it's going to select the end date for all of my multi-selected rows. We can also use the Shift key if you want to select a continuous range. I'm going to click on row 23, hold Shift, and click on row 31 to select all of those rows. Once again, selecting the end date. There's a few more dates I want to select. I'm going to grab row 37 and then hold Control to select rows 45 and 47. Then we'll scroll down and also grab our envelope level 1, 2, 3, 6, and 10. Then I will select the end date for one of those. Now all of these end dates get selected. So far, we've selected 24 tasks and we've selected only end dates so far. There are a few places where you might want to select some start dates. So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm going to scroll up to the top of this schedule and we are going to take a look at our construction phase. Now, both the start date and the end date are important. In this case, we want to see our initial site conditions as well as the final product. So I will select both the start and end date for my construction phase. Also, my tower crane, I need to show the mobilization and demobilization dates. We're going to plan logistics for both of those dates. So I will grab both the start and end date for a total of 28 dates selected in total. Now, only 2 of those were start dates. So 26 out of 28 dates selected were end dates. That should give you an idea of how often you should be selecting end dates compared to start dates. It's a common beginner mistake to grab both the start and end date for all the tasks you're interested in depicting in cmBuilder when you really want to be grabbing the end dates. Now that we've got some dates selected, let's go ahead and click on Next. cmBuilder is going to extract that list of selected dates, organize them chronologically, and present them to us here in a timeline. That's why we see construction phase at the top of the list as well as at the bottom, our start and end of construction. I'm going to change the name of those in a minute, but before we do, we're going to take a look at the cmBuilder milestone column. And I'm going to click the drop down on the first row here. It lists a couple of options, including create new milestone as well as existing milestone. So if I want, I can reuse an existing milestone. Why don't we reuse the start of construction milestone that we already had in our scenario? When I select that, you'll see that the status column updates. It now says new link. The rest of my rows say new. That's because the rest of these rows will be creating a new milestone, and at the same time they will create a new link. Whereas the first row is not creating a new milestone, it's only creating a new link. Now the link it's referring to is a link between the cmBuilder milestone and the imported schedules tasks. And that link is going to allow us to, in the future, upload a more current version of our schedule file, and any milestones in cmBuilder that are linked to that schedule will update accordingly. That link is based on a unique pairing ID in the background of that schedule file. It's not based on the task name. So you can go ahead and change task names inside of your scheduling software. That's not going to affect the relationship between this milestone and the task. Just make sure you don't completely remove that task and add a new one. Otherwise, this link will break. Let's change the name of some of these milestones before we create them. I'm going to click the pencil icon here and we'll call the first one start of construction. I'll then hit enter to commit that name change. Let's go down to the very last milestone and we'll change this one to end of construction. Once again, hitting enter to save that name change. We also have a couple of tower crane milestones that we'll create. We're going to want to rename those as well. Call this one mobilize tower crane, hitting enter. And then the second last milestone, we will rename it to demobilize tower crane. Once again, hitting enter to save that name change. You're going to click apply and you're going to notice in the timeline below, a whole lot of new milestones are going to get created. We now have 28 milestones. We're going to find those listed in the timeline at the bottom of the screen, as well as here in our project schedule. Now these milestones are all based on an imported schedule. That's why if we hover over this icon, it lets us know that the milestone has a name and date in sync with a linked task. I've showed you how to manually create milestones. I've also showed you how to import a schedule file. I just want to discourage you from mixing the two, which is having a largely task-based schedule like we have here from an imported schedule file, and then manually inserting milestones in between these linked milestones. The reason why I discourage you from doing so is any non-linked milestones that are created manually will not update when you pull in a new version of your schedule file. What that means is if you upload a new schedule file, only the linked tasks will update. What that means is if you upload a new version of your schedule file, only the linked milestones will update. Any non-linked milestones will not have their dates update. And you could end up in a situation where part of your schedule updates in cmBuilder and part of it doesn't, which you want to avoid. So I recommend sticking to either all manually created milestones or all import schedule based milestones. I'm going to go ahead and click on Done. And we see those milestones listed here at the bottom of the screen. And I can click on any one of these milestones, for example, milestone 4, and it's going to take me to that date. And normally you would see those changes reflected here in 3D, but we have to first schedule some of these actions. We also see a few buttons down here. I will describe how they work. This button, if we click it, will take us to our very first milestone. This button will take us to our last milestone. This one steps us backwards one milestone at a time, while this one steps us forward. I'll also add that you can use the left and right arrow keys on your keyboard to move forwards and backwards through milestones. Over to the right side, we see a number of buttons here. We'll start with the Fit Timeline button. When we click on Fit Timeline, it fits all of our milestones as best as it can into this timeline section. We also have a slider here, a zoom slider, which you can use to zoom in or out and view more or less details related to those milestones, their name and the date. If you hover over a milestone, hold the Control key on your keyboard and scroll up or down, it will give you the same result as using that slider. I like to fit all my milestones. Let's go ahead and attach some of these objects to our schedule. Why don't we start here with our tower crane. Now the way to attach anything to the schedule in cmBuilder is essentially the same regardless of the object type. You're going to want to double click on that object or right click on it and choose Edit. That's going to pop open the side sheet. Every side sheet is going to have a timeline section, and that timeline section has two fields, a start milestone field and an end milestone field. We're going to choose to start this tower crane at milestone 17. I click on the drop down, then scroll down the list to find milestone 17 and select it before doing the same with the end milestone. This time we're choosing milestone 27. I'm going to go ahead and click on Done and then head to our first milestone here. And our tower crane is going to disappear. Now that tower crane is not going to appear again until milestone 17. Let's skip ahead to milestone 16. We still don't see our tower crane. It's not until we reach milestone 17 that that tower crane arrives, and it will remain on site up until and including milestone 27. It will disappear at milestone 28. Let's do the same with our fence. Now our fence and our gate should appear at milestone 2. We're going to click on our fence and then hold Control on the keyboard and select our gates as well from 3D here. I will then right click and click Edit. The side sheet will pop up. It looks a little bit different than the last side sheet, but it still has the timeline section. From the start milestone, I will choose Site Mobilization and then I will click on Done. If we head back to our first milestone, we don't see the fence or those gates. It's not until we get to milestone 2 that they appear, and they will stick around for the rest of the milestones. And that's how you attach resources to your schedule. Let's take a look at our agenda. The next topics are buildings. We're going to start by showing you how to use the massing tool. And then we'll bring in and position some 3D BIM models as well as attach those to our schedule. Okay, to use the massing tool, we're going to want to turn our drawing back on to get a guide to base our massing off of. I'm going to head up to these three dots and turn on my drawing, and we're going to sketch the shape of this building using the massing tool. Heading over to the left side of the screen, clicking on buildings, we're going to click on massing. When I bring my cursor into 3D, you see that this is a sketch-based feature. So you're going to want to go ahead and click on 2D there to get a nice plan view. We'll then start the sketch by clicking on one of the corners of our building. I'm going to zoom in and start right here. I click one time and I see my line appear, and then I'm going to just zoom into the next corner and drop another point, and then pan over to the left to drop another point, and do that for the rest of the building. So we've sketched in our building footprint. If we head back to 3D, we can see what that looks like. We'll then hit confirm. Once I hit confirm, we see a massing appear. So this is a massing. Let's go ahead and adjust the number of stories here. Why don't we type in 12? So we've got 12 floors. We can also adjust the height. We'll go for 3.5 meters, which is about 11.5 feet. Now, cmBuilder's measurement fields actually allow you to type in a measurement followed by its unit. We'll type in 11.5 feet here. As soon as I hit enter, it's going to convert that to meters for me. All right, so we have 12 floors at 3.5 meters tall each. I'm going to go ahead and hit confirm. So this massing is called massing 1. I can go ahead and change that name if I want. And this name is going to appear in my tree. I'm just going to click on that check mark. If we head over to our scenario tree and expand the massing section, we'll find my massing. If I expand that massing, it will list the individual floors. Quick tip, if a object has its own row in the scenario tree, it can be attached to the schedule independent of other objects. So each of these floors can be scheduled to appear individually. We're not going to schedule these floors, but I will show you some other tips and tricks related to our massing. I'm going to go ahead and add a basement to this building. So it has an underground parkade, which we have not captured. We're going to use the Add Basement button. We need to first select level 1. I can select that in 3D or from the side sheet here on the right, and then I will click Add Basement, and it will add a floor below. So that represents our parking level. We can also change these floors individually. For example, level 11 here is going to be an elevator room, not a full floor. I'm going to double click that in 3D, and it will pop up the side sheet. From here, I can actually edit the sketch. So I can edit the footprint of this level. I'm going to click on Edit Sketch. It displays that footprint. I'm going to click on 2D and reorient my view. We're going to sketch in this elevator room. I'm going to click on Redraw here to clear that out. And then I will use my rectangle tool, which will allow me to click on one corner and then another corner. And it will place a rectangle there for me. We'll click on 3D and click on confirm to see that reflected. So that is our elevator room. Why don't we go ahead and make that a few meters taller? So that's how we can modify individual floors. Now this is a very basic massing. I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks to add details to your massings. We're going to start by using this massing to represent just our structure. I'm going to hide every other floor. So I'm going to hold Control and select every other floor here from 3D. I will then right click and click Edit Massing Element. We're going to hide these from every milestone. The remaining floors here, I'm going to convert them from full floors into slabs by changing the height of them. I hold Control, select all of them, right click on and choose Edit Massing Element. We'll change the height of these to about 0.5 meter. Now they look a lot more like slabs. Let's go ahead and click on Done. We're going to dress this up by making use of some resources from our resource library. Heading over to Resources off the left side of the screen, we're going to clear our search and change categories to building elements. I'm going to come down to structural elements, and why don't we start here with this circular steel column. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to use this as a polyline resource. I bring my cursor into 3D and we click on one of these slabs. I'm going to go ahead and use the project function here from the right side and project in the shape of my slab. Now I'm going to need to make it so my columns are inset from the edge of the slab. by a distance equivalent to about the radius of the columns, we're going to use the offset function to help with this. I click on offset, I then click on my line and I move my cursor inwards and I'll click somewhere. We can change that value here. Why don't we make that 0.5 meters? And I'm going to make sure I don't have keep original line turned on. I'll just hit enter and it places an offset line inside. Let's go ahead and hit confirm. We see a bunch of columns appear. If we click on adjust, we can adjust the height of these columns. We can also adjust the radius here. Why don't we go with 0.4? I can click on done. I can even change the spacing. So I'll choose custom spacing from the drop down and enter in the center to center distance. Why don't we switch that to 6 meters? And it spaces them out by 6 meters, for example. I'm going to go ahead and click on done. We also have, if I back out of structural elements, exterior envelope elements. I'm going to go ahead and use this horizontal window. When I click on this window, once again, going to use it as a polyline. We'll click on this slab, once again projecting in the shape of the slab. Click on confirm. That line is going to serve as the polyline. We're going to change our spacing here to overlap excessive length to fill in any gaps. We'll click on adjust and then adjust the height of these windows. And click on done and done. And we've created a fairly detailed massing quite quickly. All right, we're going to delete this. I'm just going to select this from 3D and hit delete. And the same with my columns. And we'll also delete our massing. That is how you use the massing function and how you can dress it up and make it more detailed using our resources. Next, we're going to import our BIM models. Heading again over to the left side of the screen, clicking on buildings, clicking on BIM import. It's going to pop open a side sheet where we can upload a BIM model. You can either click upload file to select it from your system or drag and drop a file into this little box. As long as that file is less than 1.5 gigs, you'll be able to upload it. We list our supported file types right here. We currently support Revit, IFC, FBX, STP, STEP, NWD, and NWC. Now we accept files up to 1.5 gigs, but we recommend you keep them under 1 gig. And in my experience, that's pretty generous when it comes to BIM models. If that doesn't suit your needs, you can import a larger file. You're just going to need to find a way to break it up into smaller pieces and upload it as multiple files. So multiple BIM imports are allowed. Today, we're not going to be uploading a file. Normally, you would upload it. It would take a minute or two to upload, and then it would take a minute or two to cook in our conversion process. Our converter will spend a couple of minutes converting your model into a format that is visible in cmBuilder, and it will appear here in your cmBuilder scenario. Normally, that whole process takes only a few minutes, less than 5 minutes in most cases. You'll get an email telling you when that model has been uploaded if you're not able to wait around for it. We don't need to upload anything today. Instead, we're going to make use of the models that are already provided in this sandbox project. Why don't we click on our structural model? We're going to click on that and click load, and it is going to appear in the center of our map tile. By default, models will appear in the center of the map tile. Now this model happens to fall on our site, but it is not perfectly aligned with our drawing, so we're going to need to adjust that. It's also in the wrong orientation. To reposition these BIM models, you're going to want to right click on that model and click Edit BIM Model, not to be confused with Edit BIM Element. We'll choose Edit BIM Model, and then from the right side sheet, we will click on Move. That's going to pull up the move handles, and we can move this as needed. Why don't we start with a rotation in this case? We're going to click on Rotate to display our rotation handles. I'm going to click on 2D. And we're going to click and hold on one of these discs and then move our cursor to rotate the model. The further out from the center point of rotation your cursor is, the more control you are going to have. At this point, I just need to position my model so that it is parallel with my grid, which I can see there in the background. Once I'm happy with that, I will release my left click and the model will stop rotating. We're going to need to adjust the position a little bit. Let's Zoom in. I'm going to click on move to display my move handles. I will then click and hold on these arrows and drag it into place. And we've positioned there in 2 dimensions. Let's click on 3D and see how this looks. When we click on 3D and rotate our view, we'll see that it is positioned in 2 dimensions, but not yet positioned in elevation. Now I could click and hold on this arrow and drag it down and place it right there on the ground, but I will show you an alternate way to position this model. We are actually going to enter in an elevation value for some point on this building where we know the elevation, and the building is going to adjust itself. Let's say I know the elevation of this slab here at the bottom. I think it's about half a meter above sea level. So we're going to use that as our reference. I'm going to head over to the right side and click on bounding box center. And this is a setting that defines where the move handle attaches to our BIM model. The default in cmBuilder is to have that handle position at the center of the bounding box or the average of the 3 dimensions. We're going to change that to a user origin. So I select user origin. I then choose relocate handles. Once I click relocate handles, I'll be able to position these handles wherever I want. We're going to click right here on this first slab, and I'm going to head over to the right side of the screen and just type in the elevation. I'm going to type in 0.75 and hit enter, and it's going to drop to that height. So that's exactly where I want it to be. Let's go ahead and click on done and done. So we've positioned this BIM model exactly where we need it to be. We are of course going to need to do our excavation. We'll do that in a little bit. Before we do, we can go ahead and attach this model to our schedule. Now I'm going to teach you some tips and tricks on how to attach this to the schedule. We're going to attach each of these individual elements to the schedule. So this is a BIM element. If I right click and choose edit BIM element, we're going to see that we have that timeline section on our side sheet. So the way we attach these BIM elements to our timeline or to our schedule is exactly the same as how we attached resources to our schedule. The difference is we have 1,000 BIM elements here, and we are not going to be able to individually attach them. So the trick behind attaching BIM models to your schedule is the strategy you use to multi-select these elements and attach them to the schedule as groups. So we're going to teach you some methods and strategies to make that a lot easier. The first thing we're going to do is hide everything in the background. That's going to make it a lot easier to focus on just our structural model. I'm going to head over to the scenario tree and click on collapse. We're going to expand our BIM import section and right click on our BIM model and choose temporary hide everything else. It's going to hide all of our resources, our drawing, massings if we had massings, and anything else. Next, we're going to hide our map. We can do that from the tree if we expand the map and earthwork section and click this little icon next to earthwork to hide that map. Now we see just our BIM model. Okay, the first milestone related to the structural model is milestone 8, where we pour our concrete footings. I'm going to head to milestone 8. I'm going to zoom into our building, and these are the footings, of course, that we're going to attach. If I click on one of these footings, it is selected. Now I could hold control and select these individual footings, but that would take me a while. Instead, I'm going to head over to the left side of the screen and just scroll up my tree. So my tree is already centered on these footings. I'm just going to grab their parent, which is called a slab. I'll then right click on that and choose edit BIM element. My side sheet will appear, and from the side sheet, I'm going to choose to attach these objects to milestone 8. Instead of finding milestone 8 in this list, I'll just use set to current, seeing as I'm already on milestone 8 in my timeline. When I hit set to current, it applies the pour concrete footings milestone as the beginning milestone for these objects. So if we back up to milestone 7, we don't see them. At milestone 8, they appear. Now I've also grabbed my slab on grade and my ramp, which is actually supposed to appear at milestone 11. So I'm going to hold control, select those from 3D, then head to milestone 11. I will right click and I'm going to make use of this shortcut, begin from this milestone. Clicking begin from this milestone is equivalent to right clicking, choosing edit BIM element and setting that milestone from the drop down. So I've already attached them. We'll close that. Let's back up a couple of milestones to milestone 9. Now milestone 9 calls for us to attach our P1 verticals, which is any walls and any columns in our parkade. Now there's a lot of those. I'm not going to try selecting them from 3D. They're also in different sections of our tree, so it doesn't make sense to grab their parent. They don't have a common parent that will work for us. Instead, we're going to make use of a selection trap to select these. A selection trap works by holding Control on your keyboard and then clicking and holding your left mouse button and dragging your cursor. This rectangle that we see appearing is a selection trap, and anything I intersect with my selection trap is going to get selected. We also have deselection traps, which work by holding Control plus Shift and then clicking and dragging. Whatever I intersect with my deselection trap is going to get deselected. I'm going to make use of those to select our P1 verticals. Now, selection traps work very well with an orthographic view. I'm going to head down to my settings. I'm going to turn on orthographic view and then adjust our view here in 3D to line up so that our building face is parallel with our view. I'm now going to hold Control on my keyboard, click and drag with my left mouse button and drag across those P1 verticals and then release my mouse. If we give that a quick rotation, you'll see I've selected only the P1 verticals. These 4 columns that you see selected are double height columns. Now that I've selected these, I'll simply right click and choose Begin from this milestone to attach those to milestone 9. So if we back up to milestone 7, we have no footings. If we click forward, we see our footings appear, then our P1 verticals, followed by our slab on grade at milestone 11. We're going to go ahead and attach the rest of the building to the schedule, but before we do, we have a couple other tricks to teach you. We'll minimize our settings. So we're going to show you how to use the sequencing helper view here on the bottom right. When I turn on sequencing helper, it color codes my BIM model based on this little legend we see in the bottom right hand corner. Anything in red is not yet attached to our schedule. Anything in blue is attached to a past milestone. And if we go back to milestone 9, that includes only our footings. Anything in green is our current milestone, which would be our P1 verticals. Anything in yellow is attached to a future milestone. So our slabs here are attached to milestone 11. So this helps me keep track of what is already attached to my schedule, but it doesn't prohibit me from being able to select objects that have already attached to the schedule, which I might do accidentally. So we're also going to turn off the visibility for any objects attached to a past milestone or a future milestone. What this is going to allow me to do is only select objects that haven't yet been attached to the schedule or are already attached to the current milestone. So we're going to go up the rest of our building, attaching the rest of these elements. Let's head to milestone 12 and we will pour our level 1 suspended slab. So I'm going to hold Control, click and drag, and select my slab. Now I've also selected some columns, so I'm going to use my deselection trap. Remember, a deselection trap works by holding Control plus Shift on your keyboard and then dragging that selection trap across to deselect those elements. Now I've got just my level 1 slab selected. I will right click and choose Begin from this milestone. We also have a keyboard shortcut, Control B, which I will start to use. And we will turn that to green. All right, let's head to the next milestone and grab our level 1 column. So once again, holding Control, clicking and dragging with the left mouse button there, selecting all of my level 1 verticals. I'll then tap Control B on my keyboard. We'll see that reflected when these objects turn green, meaning they are successfully attached to the current milestone, milestone 13. All right, let's head up the rest of the building and do the same thing using my selection and deselection traps, as well as Control B to attach these elements to my schedule. Milestone 16 here calls for my level 3 slab, so I'll use my selection trap to select that and the deselection trap to deselect my columns before tapping Control B on my keyboard to attach them to milestone 16. Milestone 17 is my tower crane mobilization. We'll skip that and head to milestone 18 where we'll grab our level 3 columns. Once again, tapping Control B on the keyboard. All right, milestone 19 is my level 6 column, so we'll grab levels 4, 5, and 6 all the way up to the level 6 columns, and then tap Control B on the keyboard. Move into milestone 23 to grab the rest of our building up to the level 10 columns. Once again, tapping Control B on my keyboard to attach those to the current milestone. After that, we'll head to milestone 24 and grab the rest of our building here. So I'll grab these, right click and choose begin from this milestone. So I've attached all of my building elements to the schedule now. You may have noticed I wasn't super careful with my stairs and stair landings. I selected sometimes the stairs from the previous level or the next level and attached them to the wrong milestone. Now those are a little bit tricky to select because they span multiple levels. They're also kind of small and hidden behind some walls. So we're going to show you another method to select just those stairs. We're going to use our scenario tree search to help with this. I'm going to head over to my scenario tree and search for stair. And as soon as I search for stair, you're going to notice that all of these other categories are going to disappear. So let's search for stair. As soon as I type in stair, why don't we collapse this tree, you'll notice that only my BIM import section is still present. And if I expand that, just my structural model, if I expand my structural model, anything that doesn't have stair in the name has been filtered out. And these intermediate levels, although they are visible, they are not selectable. If I click on an intermediate level, it actually grabs the children that satisfy that search criteria. I'll use that to my advantage. I'll just click on the top of my BIM model here, which is going to select only the objects that contain stair in the name. It skips all those intermediate levels. I can see that reflected here in 3D. I'll then simply right click and choose begin from this milestone to attach all of my stairs to milestone 24. Let's go ahead and turn off that sequencing helper then and head back to milestone 7 before our building appears. Why don't we also clear our search here? All right, I'm going to click through my milestones, and as we do, we see the building elements appearing layer by layer. So we know we've successfully attached all of these elements to our schedule. Now is a good time to probably talk about hide and show in cmBuilder. There's two types of hide show. There is a schedule-based hide show, and that's what we see here. As we click through our schedule, our structural BIM elements are appearing per our schedule. The whole model is actually present. Most of it is just hidden. So if I click on my model from the tree, you can see a portion of my building is displayed in orange here, which means it's not visible at the current milestone. As I click to my schedule, objects appear on schedule. So everything that we see should be visible at milestone 19. Now we have the option to temporary hide and temporary show objects as well. So we have schedule-based hide show. We also have temporary hide show. I'm going to head over to my tree and we will temporary show level 10. And just as I've temporarily shown level 10, recall that the rest of the elements in this scenario are temporarily hidden. And if we want to reset our temporary hide show, that is, make it so that only the objects that should be visible at milestone 19 appear and those that shouldn't be are not visible, we'll want to reset our temporary hide show. That can be done by making use of this button right here, a reset temporary hide and show, just at the top of our tree. When I click on that button, it is going to hide my level 10 and it's going to display my fence, my gate, and anything else that should be visible at milestone 19. The rest of my map is still hidden. I'm going to have to turn that on individually here from the scenario tree. And if I want to, I can switch my view back to a perspective view for something a little bit more natural. Okay, you may have noticed that our site condition objects have reappeared. Let's go ahead and hide those. So remember this site condition we created a few minutes ago? It has appeared here at milestone 19 because we never actually attached it to our schedule. So these site conditions can actually also be attached to our schedule. I'm going to right click on this and choose edit site condition. then from the timeline section here, I will have it disappear at my first milestone. So it will be visible at the very beginning of my project, but it will disappear immediately afterwards. Let's head over to milestone 1. The first milestone is visible. As I click through my next milestones, it's not visible any longer. All right, we brought in our structural model. Let's teach you a couple other tricks. Now you may have noticed that our elevator core here is not modeled as we would construct it. So we have this a few walls here that span multiple floors, and that's not quite realistic. So we're going to use the building split function to split those apart. So sometimes when we get these BIM models, they're really just modeled for design purposes, not for constructability. Thankfully, we have a tool that will help with this. We're going to head over to buildings here on the left side, and we're going to use the split building function. I'm going to click on split building here, and then we're going to choose to create a new split. I'm going to click on new split. It then asks me to select the model I want to work with. We'll just select our structural model here from 3D, and then we can choose the elements that we want to split. So I have a few walls here. I actually don't need that slab that I can select. Okay, and we're going to split those based on these slabs. So now I've selected a couple walls. I will then move on to step 2. Step 2 here asks me to create a line. So I'm going to click on create line, and we need to sketch the cut lines where we want to cut this element. Now when I bring my cursor into 3D, you'll see that I have a pencil attached to my cursor, so we have to create a sketch. Now so far we've only been sketching on horizontal surfaces, but you can actually sketch on vertical surfaces as well. So we're going to go ahead and align our sketch plane with this vertical surface. So I'm going to click, and we see our sketch plane appear here in a vertical orientation. I'm going to hit escape, and we're going to sketch in a few lines. So let's sketch in a couple of lines. I'm going to sketch in one just above this level, and then I'll hit escape, and we'll sketch in one more right about here, and then I'll hit escape. Now those lines are floating. If we want to align them with our slab, we're going to make use of the snap tool. So I click on snap, and that turns on the snap tool, and then I click on one of the lines and choose a surface to reference, and it will align with that surface. We'll do the same here with this line. I click on the line, let's zoom in, and then I click on the surface, and it aligns that line with the surface. So I'll be splitting these two vertical walls with these lines. Let's go ahead and hit confirm, and confirm again, and it's going to split those walls. So it's done. It tells us up here quickly, objects to split was 2, objects after split is 6. Let's click on done and see how that looks here in 3D. So if I select this wall now, we can see that it is broken up into multiple pieces. Oops. So we've got 6 elements here. And as I select them in 3D, you're going to notice that they're being selected here in my tree as well. And we can see that what was 1 wall is now 3. And you can tell that these objects are the result of a cmBuilder split operation, because the little icon just to the left of that element name, which used to be a cube, is now replaced by a cube with some scissors cutting through. So that lets us know that this is the result of a cmBuilder split operation. Now these elements have been split, but they appear to be in the wrong floors. So currently they are all under level 9. If we click on level 9, they're all selected. So I'm going to go ahead and attach them to the correct level. So these two belong as part of level 9. This one and this one belong in level 10. So I hold Control, start by choosing this one, right click and choose Edit BIM Element, click on Properties, and we will change it to level 10. And then I will click on Done. And we see it is moved out of the tree. And we can do the same with the other one here. Right click, Edit BIM Element, head over to Properties, change it to level 10. Clicking on Done, and then we'll do these other ones to the roof. So right click, edit BIM element, properties, switch it over to the roof. And this one as well, right click, edit BIM element, properties, move it over to the roof. Clicking on done and done. We head over to our tree and click on our roof. See that includes those walls now. Level 10 includes those walls. So there we go. Okay, that's a building split function. I'll mention a couple other things as well. Let's look at this slab. If I right click on this slab and click on edit BIM element and head back over to properties, I wanted to point out that it reports the volume to us. So this slab is about 154 cubic meters of concrete. By the way, if I hold control and I select another slab and we once again right click and click edit BIM element, if we head over to properties, it's now about 308 cubic meters, just under. So that volume value is cumulative. If I multi-select, it adds up those quantities. Also under properties, you may have noticed that we have a set listed here. Sets allow us to group BIM elements into our own user-defined groups. So for an example, why don't we go ahead and grab all of the columns on this face of the building and throw them into their own set. I'm going to hold Shift T there to flip to a 2D view and then grab my columns here using the selection trap and a deselection trap to deselect everything else, and Shift T to go back to 3D. I'm going to right click and click edit BIM element and then head over to properties and then change the set. I click on set. If I don't have any other existing sets, I can go ahead and type in a set name. We will call this group 1 and I will hit enter. All these columns are now placed in a set called group 1. If I wanted to remove them, I simply click that X, but we'll leave that as is. Let's go ahead and click on done and done, and we'll see what that set looks like. Now, if I head over to my tree, I'm not going to immediately see that set. I need to first change my group by. So we're going to change this to set. When I change it to set and we head over to our structural model, we'll see that we now have a group called group 1. If I click on it, my columns highlight, and if I expand it, we'll see that it lists all of the columns. I'll collapse that. The rest of my building elements are in the undefined set. So when you view your tree based on sets, all elements will be in the undefined set until you choose to group them into their own set. We have a few other ways to view the tree as well. So if we change that, we'll go to original file tree. Now, original file tree only affects our BIM import section. And we recommend using original file tree when you import a Navisworks or FBX file. Not so user-friendly for an IFC model like this. For an IFC or Revit model, we recommend BIM structure level and class, and that is actually the default, which lists the BIM structure by levels, and then underneath each individual level, we have the classes. And inside each class, we have the individual elements. Lastly, we have start milestone. So if we switch over to start milestone and collapse the tree, it now lists milestones. And if we click on one of these milestones, it is going to highlight those objects here in 3D as I click through. And if we expand our tree, it only lists the folders for those elements. And if we expand this folder, you'll see that the other elements inside of the slab are no longer there. Remember, our footings were also in here. We just see our slab now. So that is start milestone. Let's switch back to BIM structure level and class, which is the default. Let's also bring in our architectural model. We're going to head back over to buildings. We're going to click on a BIM import, and I'm going to choose my architectural model this time. I'm going to click on load. That's already loaded into this scenario, into this project. And as soon as it loads in, it's going to automatically position itself, and it aligns itself with our structural model. That is thanks to the fact that the consultants that provided these models used a common origin or a common datum for both of these models. So we recommend bringing in one model and positioning that before bringing in additional models. That way the additional models you import will automatically snap to the first model. And that typically works when you only have one building in the project. Now let's say that this model somehow got shifted. I will right click on my architectural model here and we'll just move it. We can actually realign it by using the snap to position function. So let's say it got moved at some point or snapped to a different model. We can right click on that model, choose edit BIM model, and from the snap to position using another model function here, we have a drop down. We'll choose our structural model. It's going to automatically align itself in the 3 dimensions. We'll click on apply and then click on done. And that's how you can make use of snap to position using another model. Okay, let's go ahead and attach our architectural model to our schedule as well. I'm going to head over to my scenario tree and collapse that. And then I'm going to expand my BIM import section. Why don't we hide our structural model? I'll just select that from the tree and tap H on my keyboard. I'll then expand my architectural model. I'm going to make use of the sequencing helper once again to color code our architectural model, and we'll attach it level by level to our schedule. Heading back to milestone 20. We're going to grab our foundation in our level 1. I'm just holding control there and selecting both rows from the tree. I'll then right click and choose begin from this milestone. That is going to attach them to milestone 20. Moving on to milestone 21, which calls for our level 2 envelope. We'll select that and I'll tap Control B on the keyboard to attach level 2 to milestone 22. And I will then go ahead and do the rest of the building here. Milestone 25 calls for envelope levels 4, 5, and 6, just holding control and multi-selecting those from the tree before right-clicking and choosing begin from this milestone. Milestone 26 calls for the rest of the building, which is level 7 through the roof. So I'll click on level 7, hold shift, and click on my roof there in my tree. I'm just going to multi-select that continuous range. Once again, right-clicking, choosing begin from this milestone to attach our architectural models level 7 through the roof to milestone 26. And if we back up a little bit, we'll see that as we click through our milestones. All right, let's turn off the sequencing helper and let's reset our temporary hide shows. Heading back over to our agenda for today. We've covered now tree functionality and sets, model split, and of course importing our BIM models. Let's talk about planning the excavation next. Our excavation is going to start at milestone 3, so we'll skip to the 3rd milestone here, which is our clear site operation. Now our excavation operations are available from terrain here on the left side. Click on terrain and click on earthwork. My earthwork size sheet will appear. I'm going to choose the cut function. The cut is a sketch-based feature here in cmBuilder. I'm going to have to choose the surface we want to cut into. Of course, that will be our ground surface. Before I do that, I'll just click on 2D and then I will click on my Project North button. And we'll just sketch in a quick clear site. Seeing as I've already sketched in my fence line, I will just click on the ground here and then project in my fence line. We're going to make use of the project function. Now it's a little bit tricky to see my fence here, so I'll just have to eyeball it, and I think it's right about there. And there we go, there is our fence. Now I will offset that inwards, so can do that by turning off the project function, and this time I'll grab these individual lines. I'm going to click and hold on this line and hold shift and just drag my cursor inwards a little bit, and we'll do the same with the other lines as well. So we just need to roughly capture the area that we want to clear this site. And I will hit confirm. And we'll go back to 3D to see a preview of our first cut operation called Cut 1. You can come up here to the right and change the name of that cut operation. I recommend naming these operations. We'll call this Clear Site Cut. I'll click on that green check mark. We have a texture applied already. We can choose a different texture for the horizontal and vertical surfaces of this cut if we like, but we'll leave both as a brown dirt texture. Then we choose between cut to depth and cut to surface. Now in this case, because we're just stripping off with top layer, cut to surface is more appropriate. It cuts with an offset to the original topographic surface of the map in that area. So we'll leave that at about 150 millimeters or 6 inches. We're going to click on done and we'll see what that looks like. So that is our clear site cut. Heading on to the next milestone for our excavations, which is milestone 5, our bulk excavation. We're going to do our first lift for this project. Once again, using cut, bringing our cursor into 3D and just clicking on the bottom of our last cut operation. We see our sketch grid up here, and we're going to sketch in the shape of this first cut. This is going to start the excavations for our underground parking. Now I could turn on my drawing and try and follow the shape of my building from the drawing, or turn on my 3D and try and sketch the outline of the building in 3D. Instead, I'm going to make use of my project function here. So let's go ahead and click on project, and we're going to project in one of the slabs of the building. Now those slabs don't appear till future milestones, so we'll skip ahead to milestone 14 or so. And then I'll click on my slab, and you'll see that it projects in that exact shape. Now, that's done most of the work for us. We do need to alter it a little bit to account for our parkade ramp here. I'm going to use the snap tool to help me with that. Let me turn off project and then come down to snap. Now that I've activated snap, I click on one of my sketch elements. That could be a line or a point. Today we're going to choose this line. And then I bring my cursor up to the end of this parkade ramp. And you see that blue square? That is a preview. So when that's oriented vertically, I just click and it pulls that line up to the end of the parking ramp. We'll do the same here with this little wall. We'll click on that line, adjust our view. I can even go underground if I want and choose this face, and it pulls that line up to that wall. So that's all we needed. Before I hit confirm, I'll head back to milestone 5, and then we'll hit confirm and we will see our preview of our cut operation. All right, in this case, we're going to be cutting to a depth. So let's switch over to cut to depth. That will make that a little bit easier to see. Let's also change the name of this operation to bulk excavation 1. All right, we'll leave the texture as is. We'll leave the cut depth as is, but we will want to slope in the walls of this cut. I'm going to head over to adjust to help me with that. We have no slope, slope in, and slope out. So depending on that sketch, whether it was to the heel or the toe of your cut, you're going to want to choose either slope in or slope out. We're going to go with a slope in this case. So I turn on slope in, and then we can set the ratio. Currently we have a 1:1 ratio. It's a little bit steep for my liking, so let's change that over to a 1:2 ratio. I'll just hit enter. It's going to slope in those individual walls. Now, if I don't want to slope in every wall, I can turn it off. For example, B here is going to be our vehicle access. So we're going to turn off sloping to C. I'll just click on C. I also need to turn it off for A. Instead of clicking the bubble, I'll head over to the list here on the right and turn it off from there. Now, that looks a lot better, but B is still a little bit steep. We're going to switch from apply to all to set ratio for each slope. And we're going to change the slope for B to a 1:3 ratio. I'm going to hit enter. You'll see that reflected there in 3D. Now, just about everything looks good, other than the fact that our slope doesn't go to the top of the cut. On this end of the cut, we're going to need to adjust our sketch top elevation. We can make use of this little button, define top elevation, to help with that. So I'm going to use the select elevation from 3D viewer button, and then just click on the top there, and it adjusts the top of my slope. So there we go, clicking on done. That's what our bulk excavation number 1 will look like. Let's go ahead and click on done. All right, that's our bulk excavation number 1. Now, milestone 6 is our bulk excavation 2. We actually want to go a little bit deeper, but we want to actually cut the same shape. The efficient way to do this would be to just make a copy of that last excavation operation and cut a little bit deeper. In excavation operations, you might expect them to live in the tree. They don't currently live in the tree. They will soon. They instead live in what we call our excavation plan. Now, to access that excavation plan, you're going to want to click on terrain and click on earthwork, and then head over to the right side and click on the earthwork timeline. And this is a timeline or a schedule of all your earthwork operations. You can see at milestone 3, is our clear site cut. And actually, if I click on it, you'll see that in my timeline, it takes me back to milestone 3. Milestone 5 is our bulk excavation 1. And we want to make a copy of this operation. I can do so by clicking on these 3 dots and clicking duplicate. And that is going to create a copy of my bulk excavation 1. I can now either drag and drop that into milestone 6 or use these 3 dots to use the move to function and select the milestone name from the drop down. We'll hit move and it's going to move to that milestone. We'll then double click on the operation to pop up the settings and options, and we'll start by adjusting the name here. We'll call this our bulk excavation 2. We can also set the cut depth to be a bit deeper. We want to cut to about 18 feet, so I'll type in 18 feet and hit enter. Once again, cmBuilder will do the unit conversion for me. Also want to turn off the sloping. We're going to head over to adjust and we'll turn on no slope. We'll go ahead and click on done. So this is our bulk excavation number 2. We have lost vehicle access, so let's go ahead and add in a ramp. And back over to the right side of my screen, I'm going to click on add operations to display my list of earthwork operations, and we'll go with a positive ramp today. We also have a negative ramp which would remove earth, but today we'll go with a positive ramp which will add earth. In both cases, you need to put the ramp up against an excavation wall. I'll click to place my ramp there, and we'll see that we need to make some adjustments. It's a little bit narrow, so we'll head over to adjust, and I will adjust the width here to 6 meters or so. It should be wide enough. You can also make it a little bit steeper. We'll make it a 25% grade. We'll just type that in and hit enter. Now you see we have some extra soil here shoring up that ramp from crumbling into our excavation. I should probably use a cut operation to remove that, but today I'm just going to change the stable soil angle ratio to a 0:1 ratio. I'm going to go ahead and click on done, and you'll see what that ramp looks like. Okay, moving ahead to milestone 7. This is going to be our detail excavation where we will want to excavate for our footings. We're going to use a cut operation. Typically, you'd want to place that cut and then maybe skip ahead to milestone 8 and use the project function here to project in these individual footings. We would have to create a separate cut for each footing. Today, I will just generalize a little bit here. I'm going to hit escape to turn off the project function. Click and hold on a line and use the shift key to adjust the positioning of these lines while remaining parallel to the original orientation. And then we'll head back to milestone 7, and that will just represent one detailed excavation. We'll hit confirm. We'll then change the depth here, cut down to about 1.5 meters. And we'll head up to the adjustments and we'll slope this out. Let's go ahead and click on done. So that is our detailed excavation. Make sure we leave that as such. And click on done. Now we'll have some footings appear. And of course that isn't perfect, but it's good enough for today. We're going to head to milestone 10 here just so we can show you how to backfill. We're going to use a fill operation this time. The fill operation works similar to the cut operation. When I bring my cursor into 3D, we see that we have a pencil and a surface, but instead of choosing the surface I want to cut into, we're going to choose the surface I want to fill above. So clicking on the bottom of that cut, we're going to click on 2D next, and I'm going to use my rectangle tool here to sketch an area. We're going to overshoot our backfill by a little bit. But because we're going to backfill to a specific height, that's not going to be an issue. Heading back to 3D, I'm going to click on confirm here. We'll leave the name as is, but we will change the color and the texture maybe to a lighter color. And instead of defining my fill height or my top elevation, I'm just going to go ahead and use this button to select an elevation from 3D. So I'll just click right here and it adjusts that fill height. Let's go ahead and click on done. And it's a seamless backfill. You can't even tell that we had a cut there before. All right, now that we're more or less done with our earthwork operations, we'll just talk quickly about the earthwork takeoff, which is available from inside the earthwork timeline. If I click on earthwork takeoff, you'll see that we have 2 tabs here, an overview tab and a detailed breakdown tab. The detailed breakdown tab lists every single operation individually. We can export this as a CSV, by the way. If we head back to the overview tab, it actually rolls up quantities based on the milestone. So we don't see individual operations, just the overall milestone. This can also be exported as a CSV. Also wanted to mention we can apply a swell factor here. Let's type in a 10% swell factor. And you'll notice once I hit enter that my compact and loose volumes are now different by 10%. Let's go ahead and click on done and we'll close this. All right, now that we have an excavation, we will add some shoring here, and maybe I need to adjust that ramp. I can right click on that ramp and click edit ramp. Just head over to reposition and just position it slightly inwards. Clicking on done. There we go. All right, we're going to head back to milestone 6 and we're going to add some shoring. Now, our shoring would really actually be installed at milestone 4 during our retention piling milestone, but it's a little bit easier to work in milestone 6. So we'll work in milestone 6 and then schedule that shoring to appear at milestone 4. I'm going to head over to my resource catalog off the left side of the screen. We're going to change our categories back up to all, and I'm just going to search for my soldier pile. I'm going to use this concrete legging king post soldier pile resource today, and this is a polyline resource. I'm going to bring my cursor into 3D. We're going to click on the bottom of our clear site operation, and we're going to roughly sketch in the shape of our shoring. Now I'm being very rough here and getting just the right number of line segments and the rough shape. We're going to use the snap function now to align these line segments with our actual excavation walls. So I turn on snap and then click on these individual lines and choose which wall I want to align them with. And pretty quickly I get the exact shape I need. Just do this last one here. All right, so that is going to be the polyline that drives our shoring. Clicking on confirm, we'll see our shoring appear, but it is a little bit wacky. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. The reason why it's done this is because it is projected on the terrain, but it's projecting itself on a vertical surface. So it's aligning itself with the vertical surface, not the horizontal clear site cut operation. So we're going to need to change our sketch a little bit. I'm going to click on edit sketch and we will offset this shape using the offset function here. I simply click on my line and then pull my cursor out a little bit, and I just need to move it out a very tiny amount. I can zoom in to help with this. That should be good. And we'll click on confirm and we'll see that our shoring looks a lot better now. Let's go ahead and make some further adjustments. We're going to click on adjust. We will change the height here so that it is tall enough or deep enough. Then click on done. Let's also change the scheduling here. So from the timeline, we'll have it so that these elements appear at milestone 4, our retention piling milestone. I'm going to go ahead and click on done. We should also add in a safety fence. So from my search here, I'm going to search for wood frame guardrail. And that is something like a 2x4 fence. This is a polyline resource. I'm going to click on the ground, and this time I get to use my project function to project in the polyline that drives my shoring. Now I wasn't able to use that for my shoring sketch because we can't project in the shape of a void. It has to be solid geometry. I'll then just select that one line segment and hit delete on my keyboard to delete the fence at the top of my ramp. And we will turn off our logo and click on done. And there is our safety fence. All right, heading back to our agenda. Done with the excavations. Let's cover annotations, and then we'll teach you some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of our resource library. Annotations can be found here on the left side of our screen, and we're going to actually head to our very first milestone and start with annotations from milestone 1. Under annotations, we have zones, labels, callouts, and lines. Why don't we go ahead and use a label to begin with? As soon as I bring my cursor into 3D, we'll see that I have a label attached to my cursor. I can click and place this wherever I want, maybe on some surrounding buildings. I can rotate it, put it up against my fence if I wanted it to act as some custom signage. Today, I will go ahead and label one of the surrounding streets. So this here is 163rd Street. I'm just going to place my label on the ground. Let's zoom in and we'll teach you how to work with a label. Now my label is partially cut off because it is placed on a slope, and that label is oriented perfectly horizontally. To fix that, we simply got to turn on the project on terrain function. Then we will make some color changes here. Now, whenever I'm labeling a road, I think the white text is appropriate. I don't need a background in this case, so let's just remove that background color. And we will label this street. It's actually called 163rd Street. The text is a little bit tiny, so why don't we increase the font size? That's down from right here. We're going to increase it to about 4.7 meters tall. Now it has a red border around it. I don't quite like to see that. I'm going to turn it off from right here. You could choose a different color or a different thickness. The positioning kind of overlaps with the speed limit there, so why don't we click and drag and move this over a little bit. And we'll just click on done and done. So that is an example of a label. All right, why don't we do some zones next? We're going to turn on our drawing. So heading up to the quick access menu, clicking on drawing and turning on our logistics plan. And let's head to milestone 2. And we have a few zones, as you can see here. So why don't we go ahead and capture some of those zones. Heading over to annotate, we're going to click on zone and we're going to choose the surface we want to sketch. And of course, we're going to choose our ground surface here. I'll just click once and I see my sketch grid appear. We'll click on 2D then and quickly sketch in a zone. So this is my site facilities. We're going to hit confirm and we'll see our zone appear. We can give that a name. We'll call this site facilities. And we will definitely want to project it on the terrain. We will change our color, however, to a highlighter color. So I'm going to click on plus here and choose my bright green, and I'll go up to the top right corner. Why don't we bring that transparency down a little bit so it looks like a highlighter, and we'll click on done. So that is one example of a zone. So we can use zones to highlight some certain areas if we like. We can also use zones to hide areas. For example, we will have demolished this stage. So if I want to replace that, let's say with gravel, I can head over to annotate, click on zone and sketch a zone over top of that. And maybe I'll actually extend this out. I'm just going to click and hold on that line and hold the shift key and we'll extend that. And actually anywhere else that I think I might be demolishing, I can also capture in this zone. So why don't we also sketch a zone around these cabanas, just like that. We're going to hit confirm, and now we have 2 zones inside of one sketch. We'll rename this to demo. And I'm going to change the color here to a texture. We will choose maybe a gravel texture, and we'll click on done. So there we go, 2 use cases for zones. Why don't I turn my drawing here, right click and hide that. Go back to 3D, just hit Shift T there. You'll see that the zones are projected on the terrain. All right, let's keep it going. Why don't we add in some resources next? So if we turn on our drawing again, we actually have some resources to drop here. We're going to add in our site trailers and our toilets. This is going to be our construction parking right over here. So heading over to our resource library, we are going to firstly turn off our drawing. And we're going to change categories here to logistics and facilities. We're going to come down to offices and we're going to find some trailers that we can make use of. Why don't we, for example, say make use of this 20 by 8 foot construction trailer, maybe a little bit small, but we can add multiple. Now this is a point resource. When I bring my cursor into 3D, we'll see that it's attached to my cursor. And I wanted to teach you some tips and tricks. Now I don't like the orientation of this, how it is currently. So we're going to want to rotate that. Now, instead of placing this and rotating this after the fact, I can actually just hold the Alt key on my keyboard and then move my mouse. And as I move my mouse, it rotates that trailer. If I hold the Shift key, it locks me to 45-degree rotation increments. So I'll find an orientation I like, and then we'll place it in this zone. Now, before I place it in this zone, I mentioned I wanted to place multiple. So I'm going to hold the Control key. When I hold the Control key and I click, it places the first instance, but I have a second instance here already ready to go. So we're going to place that right next to it. I'm going to click and place a second trailer right here. And as soon as I do, this time I wasn't holding control, it pops up my options there on the right. Now I do want a third instance, so we're going to copy this current one. I'm going to right click and choose copy, and then I'm going to paste it. I just right click and click paste, and I have a third copy here attached to my cursor. We're going to put this right nearby, so I'm going to click right about here. Now the alignment is pretty terrible. I could click M on my keyboard there to pull out the move handles and push that back into place, but instead we're going to make use of the snap to face function. I'm going to turn on snap to face, and the way this works is I choose a reference face on the object I want to move, this third trailer, and then I choose a reference to align it with. We'll choose the second trailer right next door, and it pushes it back to align that trailer. Let's go ahead and click on done, and I'll hit escape. Now we can see that our trailers are kind of clashing. I should move the first and second trailer over a little bit. I'm going to hold control and multi-select both of those. Then I'm going to tap M on my keyboard to pull out my move handles, and I can move these in a single action. I'm going to go ahead and click on done. Let's also add in some cars. So we're going to have some cars parked over here. This is going to be our construction parking. I'm going to head over to resources off the left side of the screen. We're going to back out of logistics and facilities, switch categories to public vehicles, and from our generic vehicles we are going to be able to insert some cars. Now I could bring in cars one by one, but we actually have a nice set of 4 parked cars. It's called parked cars. I'm going to click on that and I bring my cursor into 3D. We see I have 4 cars attached to my cursor. I'll just hold the Alt key and rotate this and place those cars right there. Now 4 cars isn't enough for you. We do actually have this cars polyline pattern. If I click on this, I can sketch in a polyline. It's going to place a whole bunch of cars for me. Now let's just say I want to parallel park some cars over here. I totally could. I would just click right here, sketch in a quick line, hit confirm, and it's going to place a whole bunch of cars. We need to move those a little bit. And well, actually we'll leave them here. We just won't project them on the terrain, so we'll turn on project on terrain. And of course we need to rotate those, so I'll head over to adjust and we'll grab this adjustment handle and rotate them. Now if I had parked these in some parking stalls, I would want to rotate them to 90 degrees, but in this case we will face them this way, and we'll just click on done. So you can very quickly populate a parking lot using the polyline cars. All right, let's also grab our drill rig. So we're going to head over to resources once again, change categories up to all, and I'm going to search for a drill rig. And I'm going to make use of my CH650 here. This is another point resource. We're going to bring our cursor into 3D, and I'm going to hold Alt to rotate my drill rig to orient it this way, and we'll place it on top of where we expect our piles up here. And I don't see those right now. I'm just going to head up and turn on my drawing so I get an idea for where my building footprint is, and then I will place it right about there. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and click on done and close this. All right, now this machine is going to appear at milestone 2, and we're going to have him disappear at milestone 5. So we're going to head to milestone 5. I will right click on him and choose end at this milestone. Now you can tell that this machine is floating here at this point, which doesn't look very realistic. In fact, it's just sitting in that same spot for milestones 2, 3, 4, and 5, which doesn't look very realistic. So what we'll have it do is move around the site from milestone to milestone. To do so, you're going to want to double click on that machine. We're going to head over to the Move tab, and we want to look at this positioning setting. We have 2 options here, constant and dynamic. Now, constant positioning applies 1 position to every milestone that this resource is on site for. Dynamic allows it to change over time. So we're going to make sure that's set to dynamic. Then all we need to do is head to the next milestone, in this case milestone 3. We will rotate this machine. I'm going to tap R on my keyboard to pull out the rotation handle. I'll grab a hold of that handle and hold the shift key to rotate it. And then tap M. We're going to move it over to the other end of the site. And then we're going to head to milestone 4 and do the same thing. Once again, tapping R to pull up my rotation handles. and rotating it before tapping M, and I'm going to move it over to this position here. Then we'll head to milestone 5 and we will put it off to the side. So once again, I will rotate it and move it off to the side here. We'll then tap A to pull up the adjustments, and I'm going to grab the boom here and tilt it back. We'll put it back into transport mode. And by milestone 6, it's going to disappear. All right. So that is thanks to the dynamic positioning. Let's watch that through. Milestone 2, milestone 3, milestone 4, milestone 5, and milestone 6. It's gone. And we're going to make use of that dynamic positioning once again, starting at milestone 3 when our excavation begins. So let's turn off our drawing once again. And let's add some excavation equipment. So heading over to resources, we're going to change categories here to equipment and vehicles. We're going to come down to heavy machinery. We're going to find an excavator. I'm going to go with this medium-sized cat. Choose this one. I bring my cursor into 3D. I can hold Alt if I want to rotate it. I'll just click to place it there. And we will click on Done. Let's also grab a dump truck. Changing categories back up to all. I'm going to search for a dump truck. And I'll find one that makes sense. Why don't we go with this one? I'm going to bring my cursor here into 3D and place that dump truck near to my excavator. All right, clicking on Done. We're going to head to milestone 4 here, and we're going to move these guys around the site. So I'm going to hold Control, select my excavator, tap M on my keyboard to pull out my move handles, and we'll just reposition these slightly for a little bit of variety, a little bit more of a realistic depiction of what we'd actually see on site. We're going to head to milestone 5 next, give them another rotation, and we'll move them again. Now you can tell that we're going to need to drop them down by 3 meters, if you recall, from when we did this first excavation. Now if I want to move 2 resources down exactly 3 meters, or any specific amount for that matter, the way to do it would be to click the arrow in the direction you want to move them. So we want to move them downwards. I'll just click that Z arrow, and I'm going to type in -3 because we're going downwards 3 meters. I hit enter and it drops them down exactly 3 meters. We're going to head to milestone 6 next, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tap M. We're going to move them over here this time. And we need to drop them down again. This time I'm going to use the drop to surface function. The keyboard shortcut for that, by the way, is Control plus the down arrow. I click that and it drops them down to the nearest surface. Milestone 7 is going to be the final milestone for our excavation equipment. Let's go ahead and reposition these individually. We'll bring our excavator over here, and I'll tap Control down on the keyboard to drop them down, and we will click on Done and Done. Now I'm going to want to end both of these. I'll hold Control, select both, right-click, and choose End at this milestone. When we get to milestone 8, they are going to disappear, and we're going to see our concrete appear. Now, let's bring in some concrete equipment. Heading over to Resources off the left side of my screen. I'm going to change categories. I'm going to clear my search and search for concrete pump. And we will find a concrete pump truck that makes sense for our application. Why don't we go with this Alliance machine? Bringing my cursor into 3D, we see that this is a point resource, meaning that if I hold the Alt key, I can move my mouse and it will rotate that truck. We'll place it right about there. I click to place it. All right, we're going to need to adjust that boom. We will do that in a minute. Before we do, let's bring in some concrete trucks. So some concrete mixer trucks, searching for concrete trucks. We'll go with this 11-yard mixer truck. I'm going to click on that and bring my cursor into 3D. I'm going to hold Alt and rotate them around so that the back of that truck is right near the hopper. I'm going to hold Control, and that way I have a second truck. I'll place that right next to it. And then we'll hit Escape. So we got 2 concrete trucks. We'll close our resource library here. We're next going to click on our pump truck. We need to adjust that boom. I'm going to double click on him and head over to the adjustments. And I wanted to point something out here. A minute ago, I explained the dynamic versus constant positioning when we brought in our drill rig. And we actually have a similar idea here with our adjustments. We have constant and dynamic adjustments. Now this pump truck has only a dynamic section, so all of the adjustments we see listed here in the dynamic section, those can change over time. The values can change over time. So we're going to position the placement boom to something that makes sense here. I'm going to individually grab these handles and reposition it just like that. And then I'm going to skip forward to milestones and adjust that positioning. I'm going to skip forward another 2 milestones and adjust the positioning again, and then another couple of milestones and adjust the positioning again, and then another couple of milestones and adjust it again. Now I know I'm clashing there, but for example's sake, I think we're all right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on done, and done will then end this concrete equipment. I'm going to hold Control, select my concrete mixer trucks. We're going to right click and choose end at this milestone. Now these trucks are going to disappear when we get to milestone 17. Now that we have our tower crane, why don't we show how we're going to mobilize this tower crane. We're going to head over to our resources. Once again, we're going to change categories here after clearing our search. We're going to change categories to equipment and vehicles. Come down to mobile cranes. We got 386 makes and models to choose from. Why don't we go ahead and choose our AC100. I'm going to search for that. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to bring my cursor into 3D, and we will see that we have that crane attached to my cursor. I'm going to place it right here on the street nearby. So I'm going to click right here to place it. And we are going to need to adjust the boom. So let's click on 2D. We're going to rotate that boom till it points at the center of the mast of our crane there. We'll then click off to the side to grab our other adjustment handles, and we will reposition that. Let's go back to 3D and see how this looks. So that looks pretty good. We can bring that hook down a little bit. I need to just touch that over a little bit. There we go. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to click on done and done. Now we are blocking the street here, so why don't we turn on our drawing and see if we have plan for this. We do have a temporary traffic control zone, so let's go ahead and add some cones to block off this area. All right, heading over to resources off the left side of the screen, clearing our search. We are going to change categories back up to all and search for traffic. So we got a whole bunch of resources here. Why don't we go with these connected traffic bulwarks? I'm going to click on that. I'm going to sketch it to capture this area. I'm going to zoom in here and click. I should click on 2D first. Click on the ground there. And I'm going to tap A on my keyboard to pull up my arc. Instead of smart arc, I'm going to go for my 3-point arc. The first point is already selected. We'll select our second point, and then I will set my third point by just moving my cursor over. Now I want to switch over to a line. I'm going to tap L on my keyboard to pull up my line tool to sketch a line, and then we need another arc. So once again, clicking on A to get my 3-point arc, set the second point, and then set the third point. So that's going to be my traffic control area. We'll just hit escape there. Probably didn't need to be that big, but that's all right. We're going to go ahead and hit confirm, and we'll see those traffic cones appear. I'm going to want to project those on the terrain, so let's turn that on, and it drops them down to the ground. We're going to go ahead and click on done. We'll also throw in a quick truck here, so let's clear that and change categories here to equipment and vehicles, down to transport vehicles, and we'll find a flatbed. Just search for flatbed. Oops, why don't we search for this truck here? I know that, oh, there it is, flatbed semi. And we'll place it right nearby. And again, we have a box on the back of that. I'm going to minimize that down to 0. Clicking on done. Should probably also add somebody here to manage our traffic. So once again, searching for traffic. And we will grab one of these guys with a stop sign. I'm going to bring them into right about here. We'll hold Alt and rotate him so he faces traffic, and we'll place him in that square. So there we go. We got some traffic controls. Clicking on done. Why don't we fill in this zone, because our drawing won't be here in presentation mode. We're going to fill in this zone with something that makes sense. So heading over to annotate, clicking on zone, choosing the surface you want to sketch on. I'm going to make use of my project tool to project in the shape of my cone area. We're going to hit confirm, and why don't we give that a nice texture instead of a gravel texture. We'll go for this caution zone texture, and we'll call that our caution zone. All right, hitting done there. There is our caution zone. Now, these are only going to be here for one milestone, right? That's all it takes to mobilize our tower crane. So I'm going to also end them at this milestone. I'm going to hold control, select a couple of resources. I can also use my selection trap here to select these. I will right click then and end them at this milestone. I'll do the same here for my zone. Select my zone, right click, choose end at this milestone. When we get to milestone 18, they disappear. We just see our tower crane. We'll double click on our tower crane and adjust it. We're going to rotate it around so it's actually on top of our site. And kind of like we did with our pump truck, I'm going to rotate it every couple of milestones to make it look like we're actually getting something done and it's not just a statue. We'll also jump it here at milestone 20. And every couple of milestones, I'm just going to rotate it around a little bit. All right, milestone 27 is going to be the final milestone for our temporary works before we complete the project. So we'll just put this crane back to kind of its nominal position here, and we'll click on done. And at milestone 28, that's going to be the end of this project. So all of our temporary works need to disappear by milestone 28. So we're going to head back to milestone 27. We're going to hold control and select all of our resources. We had some gates, we had some trailers here, some cars. We're going to grab all of that, and we're going to right click and choose end at this milestone. Should probably also grab my safety fence there. Right click, end at this milestone. We also have some zones that we want to end at this milestone. I'm going to select those and tap Control E on the keyboard to end them at this current milestone. All right, moving on to milestone 28 then. All of that temporary work disappears. We're left with just our building and our clear site. So let's quickly backfill this area to bring it back up to grade. So heading over to terrain, clicking on earthwork. We're going to click on fill here. I'm going to choose the surface I want to fill above. We're going to click on that bottom of that clear site cut. Let's click on 2D here and sketch in a quick rectangle, just like this. Also, I don't want to end up backfilling my building there, so we're going to project in a negative space as well. We're going to head over to maybe milestone 18, click on project, click on our slab to get the shape of the slab in here. All right, it tells us that we can't create a sketch with multiple shapes, so we're going to have to do some touch-ups. Let me just hit escape. We are going to firstly bring this line down. Actually, we'll delete that line and delete this line. I'm going to tap L and kind of connect this here and this here. Let's go ahead then and align these lines with our excavation cut. So I'm going to use the snap function to do that. Zooming in, I'm going to tap on S on my keyboard to activate the snap tool, select these lines and align them with the edges of our excavation cut here. There we go. We'll click on confirm and you see what that looks like. Now it's backfilling a lot higher than we needed. So we will choose a fill to terrain here, and then we'll apply a 0 offset. So once we click on done, it's just going to backfill up to the original terrain. Now we still see a dirt texture here. We could go ahead and use some more zones to dress that up a little bit. I'm actually going to head back to my project. I'm going to right click on this and open that in a new tab. And we're going to head over to our complete scenario. So this complete example is what the final project should really look like. And we're going to copy in the zones from the final milestone. We're going to click on this button to take us to the very last milestone where we have a complete project. And you'll see what that all looks like. Now, instead of trying to select them all here from 3D, we're going to head up to our tree, change that to start milestone, collapse our tree, and just head down to milestone 27 in this case. We'll expand that, and we are going to grab our zones here. Why don't we also grab some of these resources? If I expand my resources, we can grab our public vehicles, maybe some logistics and facilities, and some building elements. So then right click and copy, and then head back to my duplicate me scenario, and we're going to right click and click paste. And then from this side sheet, it's going to list the objects you want to paste. We'll click next. We're going to switch that milestone mapping to milestone 28, and then we'll just click on duplicate. It's going to take a sec, but it will drop in all of those elements. And there we go. We are finished with this project. That brings us to the end of the second sandbox tutorial video. In the third video, we will cover the presentation mode. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.